The stars did not care that a ship was dying. They burned with cold, indifferent brilliance, scattered across the endless darkness like countless diamonds. Beautiful, eternal, unmoved. Not one of them offered hope to the 3,000 souls trapped aboard the Vani Star. The massive colony ship drifted silently through the void, powerless and forgotten. Its engines were dead, its communications were fading, slowly spinning between distant star systems where no trade routes existed and no patrol fleets ever ventured. It had become nothing more than a metal coffin floating through an uncaring universe. Captain Ivalath stood motionless before the bridge's panoramic observation window. The soft blue glow beneath her translucent skin pulsed faintly, betraying the exhaustion she struggled to hide. Among the Kishiri, emotions could never truly be concealed. Their bioluminescent bodies reflected every feeling: hope, fear, sorrow, joy. Tonight, only despair remained. The Kishiri had never been conquerors. They were artists who painted with living light. Musicians whose songs could move entire civilizations to tears. Poets, scholars, and dreamers who believed beauty was stronger than violence. For thousands of years, they had never needed soldiers. Now, they were simply prey. 19 days. For 19 endless days, their distress beacon had repeated the same desperate message, broadcasting into the infinite silence of space. Help us. Please. Anyone. The signal traveled across light years of empty space, searching for a listener that never came. No rescue ships. No replies. Only silence. They were too far from Kishiri territory. Too far from any inhabited system. Too far from anyone who would risk their own lives for a colony ship carrying nothing but families searching for a new beginning. Children. Parents. Elders. 3,000 innocent lives, abandoned by the galaxy. Then came the memory that haunted every survivor. The drive core had failed without warning. One moment, the Vani Star had been gliding peacefully through hyperspace, carrying its passengers toward a distant world filled with hope and promise. The next, every alarm aboard the ship erupted at once. The lights died. The engines screamed, and their future vanished in a single terrifying instant, and the Vani Star had been thrown back into normal space. Her engines dead, her power failing, her crew helpless to do anything but watch their reserves slowly drain away. Yvel pressed her palm against the cold glass of the window. 6 days. They had 6 days of oxygen remaining if they kept the scrubbers running at maximum efficiency. The heating systems were already struggling, and the temperature in the outer compartments had dropped to dangerous levels. She had ordered everyone to move toward the center of the ship, packing families into spaces meant for cargo, trying to preserve warmth through shared body heat. The children did not understand. They thought it was an adventure, a game of camping in strange places. While the adults fixed the broken engines, Ilith envied them their ignorance. She wished she did not know that no one was coming, that her people would slowly freeze and suffocate in the darkness between stars, that the universe was vast and empty and utterly indifferent to their suffering. Behind her, the bridge crew worked in silence. There was nothing left to do, really. They had tried everything. They had rerouted power and attempted repairs and sent distress signals on every frequency they could reach. They had prayed to gods they were not sure existed. Nothing had worked. Nothing would work. The door to the bridge slid open, and Elder Svuth entered slowly. He was old. His glow faded to a gentle amber that spoke of wisdom earned through many decades of life. He had been a teacher once, a keeper of stories and histories. Now he was simply another passenger waiting to die. "The families in Compartment 7 are asking about rescue again," Sorvith said quietly. "They want to know when help will arrive." Ivalath did not turn from the window. "What did you tell them? That we must be patient, that the universe is large and signals travel slowly, that someone will hear us eventually. You lied to them." "I gave them hope." Sorvith moved to stand beside her, his old eyes reflecting the cold stars. Hope is sometimes more important than truth, Captain, especially for the children. If Elith closed her eyes, we should have taken the established route, the safe passage through Covenant space. I wanted to save time to reach the colony world faster, and now you made a reasonable decision based on the information you had, Sorv said gently. The drive core failure was not your fault. It was simply bad luck, and bad luck does not discriminate between the cautious and the bold. My caution or boldness does not matter now. 3,000 people are going to die because I chose wrong. Sorvith was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Do you remember the old stories, Captain? The ones we tell children about the galaxy beyond our borders?" Frowned. Which stories? The stories about humans. A chill ran through Avelith that had nothing to do with the failing heating systems. Yes, she remembered those stories. Every Kashiri child learned them, whispered warnings about the strange beings from a distant yellow star. Humans were violent. Humans were dangerous. Humans had risen from nothing to become one of the most feared species in the galaxy. Within a single generation, the story said that humans had destroyed the hegemony, an empire that had ruled 1,000 worlds for 10,000 years. The story said that humans laughed in the face of death and threw themselves into battles. They could not win, and somehow won them anyway. The story said that humans were unpredictable, emotional, and utterly without the calm logic that governs civilized species. Why do you mention humans now? I've asked. Because we are an unclaimed space, Sorv said, the regions between empires where borders blur and law means nothing. If anyone patrols these areas, it would be humans. Their territory is not far from here, relatively speaking. You think humans might find us? I think it is possible. If Elith shook her head slowly, and if they do, what then? The stories say humans take what they want. They are warriors and conquerors. Why would they help us? Sorv's glow flickered with uncertainty. I do not know, Captain. I only know that humans are our only chance. No one else is coming. No one else is close enough to reach us in time. So, we pray for monsters to save us. We pray for anyone to save us. And we hope that the stories are wrong, or at least incomplete. If stared out at the stars for a long time, the cold was creeping into the bridge now, the heating systems losing their battle against the endless chill of space. In the distance, she could see the faint glow of a nebula, purple and pink gases swirling in patterns that would take millions of years to change. The universe was beautiful and terrible, and it did not care at all about the tiny ship and its tiny passengers. The 19th day passed into the 20th. The oxygen reserves dropped lower, the temperature continued to fall. Evalath visited the compartments where the families huddled together, offering what comfort she could, lying through her teeth about rescue ships that were surely on their way. The children believed her. The adults pretended to believe her. Everyone knew the truth, but spoke it to no one. On the morning of the 20th day, Ilith was dozing in the captain's chair when the sensor officer made a sound she had never heard before. It was something between a gasp and a cry, high and sharp, and filled with emotion that Avelith could not immediately identify. "Captain," the officer said, his voice trembling. "Captain, there is a ship." Avevelith was on her feet instantly, exhaustion forgotten. "What? Where?" "Emerging from hyperspace bearing to 74. Distance approximately 50,000 kilometers. It is large, Captain. Very large." Rushed to the sensor console, her heart pounding. The display showed a massive signature, a vessel many times the size of the Villani star. It had dropped out of hyperspace close enough to reach them within hours, close enough to have heard their distress signal and responded. Someone had answered. "Can you identify the ship?" Ilith demanded. "Is it Kashiri Covenant? What are the hull markings?" The sensor officer worked frantically, adjusting the display, trying to get a clearer image. When the picture finally resolved, his glow went pale white with fear. Ivel saw it too. The ship was angular and aggressive, bristling with weapon systems that looked capable of cracking moons. The hull was dark gray, almost black, built for war rather than beauty, and on the side, painted in letters that needed no translation, was a designation that made her blood run cold. TNS Resolute Terran Navy Ship. Humans, do the most dangerous species in the galaxy, had found them. Round the bridge, the crew began to panic. Their glows flickered wildly between colors, fear and confusion, and something like despair mixing together in a chaotic display. The sensor officer stepped back from his console, as if the ship on the screen might reach through and grab him. "What do we do?" someone asked. "Captain, what do we do?" If did not answer immediately. She stared at the warship on the screen, at its weapons and armor and obvious power, and she thought about the story she had heard since childhood. Humans were destroyers. Humans were conquerors. Humans took what they wanted and crushed anyone who stood in their way. But humans had answered their distress call. Humans had come. "We do nothing," Ivalath said. "Finally, we wait. We see what they want. They are hailing us," the communications officer said quietly. "They are requesting to speak with our commanding officer." Ivalath straightened her uniform, trying to project a calm she did not feel. Her people were watching her. Her crew was looking to her for guidance. She was the captain, and she would face whatever came next with dignity, even if it meant facing monsters. "Open a channel," she said. Dot. The screen flickered, and then a human face appeared. It was a female, Ila thought, though she was not entirely certain how to read human features. The human had dark hair pulled back from her face and eyes that seemed to hold both warmth and steel in equal measure. She wore a uniform of dark blue with symbols of rank on her shoulders. "This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Terran Navy ship Resolute," the human said. Her voice was calm and steady, carrying no threat that Ilith could detect. "We received your distress signal. We are here to help. Please tell us what you need." Blinked. She had expected Dimma. The shuttles launched from the Resolute like seeds scattered from a pod, small craft carrying humans and equipment across the void toward the dying Kashir ship. Commander Sarah Chen watched them go from the bridge of her warship, her arms crossed over her chest, her mind already working through the logistics of the rescue. 20 days adrift, 3,000 civilians failing life support and a dead drive core. It would not be easy, but her crew had handled worse. They were Terran Navy, and this was what they did. Engineering teams report ready for boarding, Lieutenant Commander Torres said from the operations station. Medical is prepping for potential hypothermia cases and malnutrition. Supplies are being loaded onto the secondary shuttles now. Chen nodded. "Good. Tell Dr. Okonkwo to bring extra thermal blankets if they have been without proper heating for 20 days. The children and elderly will be the most affected." I commander round the bridge. The crew moved with quiet efficiency. There was no excitement in their actions, no hesitation. A distress call had been received and they had responded. This was as natural to them as breathing, as fundamental as the oath they had sworn when they joined the Navy. Every human learned from childhood that space was dangerous and unforgiving, that the void between stars was cold and dark and empty. And every human learned that you did not leave people alone in that darkness. Not ever, not for any reason. Dach Chen thought about the Kishir captain she had spoken to. The fear in those strange glowing eyes. The confusion when offered help without conditions. She had seen that reaction before from other species, other civilizations. The galaxy was full of beings who could not understand why humans would risk themselves for strangers. They had grown up in a different universe, one where help always came with a price, where kindness was a transaction rather than a gift. Humans had once been like that too long ago, before the stars, before the great wars that had nearly destroyed their species, before they had learned in blood and fire and sacrifice that the only way to survive the darkness was to face it together. The first shuttle docked with the Vani star, and Shen switched her display to show the helmet camera of Lieutenant Park, the leader of the engineering team. The image showed a dim corridor, emergency lighting casting, and weak red shadows on walls decorated with artwork that seemed to be part of the ship itself, beautiful even in distress. Kishir figures appeared at the end of the corridor, their skin glowing with pale light that flickered nervously. They were tall and thin, almost fragile-looking, and they watched the human team approach with eyes that held both hope and terror easy. Park said, his voice calm and reassuring, "We are here to help. Can someone show us to your engineering section? We need to see your drive core." One of the Kishiri stepped forward hesitantly. I am Technician Verith. I can take you there, but the damage is severe. We have tried everything. Nothing works. Let us take a look. Park said, human engineers are pretty good at making things work. On the bridge of the Resolute, Chen allowed herself a small smile. Park was good with people, good at putting nervous civilians at ease. He would get the Kishiri talking, get them to trust the team, and before long, they would be working together as if they had known each other for years. Another shuttle docked, this one carrying the medical team. Dr. Okonkwo's voice came through the communication channel. Steady and professional. Commander, we are boarding now. The Kishir are directing us toward their central compartments where the families are gathered. Initial reports suggest significant cold exposure and dehydration. We are deploying thermal blankets and beginning fluid treatments. Understood. Doctor, keep me updated. Of course, Commander Chen returned her attention to the main display, watching the sensor readings that showed the empty space around them. They were far from any established territory, far from patrols and checkpoints, and the safety of civilization. Anything could be out here in the dark between stars. Pirates, raiders, slavers looking for easy prey. She did not like being stationary. A warship was meant to move, to hunt, to respond. Sitting still made them vulnerable. But the Kishiri needed help, and that meant staying until the job was done. Aboard the Villani Star, the human team spread through the ship like medicine flowing through veins. They brought light and warmth and hope to people who had resigned themselves to death. In the engineering section, Lieutenant Park and his team studied the damaged drive core, speaking in technical terms that the Kishiri could barely follow. In the medical bay, Dr. Okonkwo treated children who had grown too cold and too hungry, wrapping them in blankets that seemed impossibly warm, and giving them drinks that tasted like nothing they had ever experienced. Captain Ivelth walked among her people, watching the humans work. She could not understand them. Everything she had been taught, everything she had heard in stories and warnings, told her that humans were dangerous, violent, unpredictable. Yet here they were moving through her ship with gentle hands and soft voices, asking nothing in return for their aid. A human medic was kneeling beside an elderly Kishir, an old female named Svatha, who had been struggling with the cold more than most. The medic was a young male with dark skin and kind eyes, and he was adjusting a heating pad beneath's back while speaking to her in slow, careful words. "This will help warm you up," the medic said. "The temperature should be comfortable, but please tell me if it is too hot or not hot enough. Can you understand me?" SVH's glow flickered with confusion. "Why? Why do you help us? We are not your people. We are not your responsibility." The medic smiled, and there was something in that smile that could not quite identify. It was warm and sad and understanding all at once. "Everyone is our responsibility," he said simply. "That is what it means to be human." Moved on, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. In another compartment, a human engineer was showing a group of Kiri children how to use a device that produced light and heat from a small power cell. The children were laughing, their fear forgotten in the joy of this new game. The engineer was laughing too, making exaggerated expressions that sent the children into fits of delight. These were the monsters. These were the destroyers of empires, the breakers of worlds, the most feared species in the galaxy. Elder Sorth found her standing in a corridor watching a human doctor treat a sick infant while the mother wept with relief. "You see it too," Svath said quietly. "The contradiction. I see nothing that makes sense," Evil admitted. "They are supposed to be killers, conquerors. Why are they acting like this? Perhaps the stories were wrong. Stories do not come from nothing. The hegemony fell. The Vraxian Empire was broken. Humans did those things. The violence is real." Sorth nodded slowly. "Yes, the violence is real, but perhaps we have misunderstood its purpose. Perhaps we have confused the weapon for the wielder, the strength for the intention." If did not understand what he meant, but before she could ask, her communication device chirped urgently. It was the bridge, and the voice on the other end was frightened. "Captain, you need to come back immediately. There are ships approaching." Many ships. Illith ran dot. She reached the bridge, breathless and afraid, her glow pulsing with alarm. The sensor display showed what her officer had described. Multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace surrounding the two vessels in a formation that spoke of hostile intent. 5 ships, each one bristling with weapons, each one marked with symbols that every spacefaring species learned to fear. Vraxian raiders, slavers. They must have been tracking us, the sensor officer said, his voice shaking, waiting for us to weaken, waiting for the right moment. Ivalath stared at the display, horror flooding through her. The raiders had arrived at the worst possible time. The Kashiri were helpless, their ship still dead in space. And the humans were scattered throughout the star, their warship sitting vulnerable and alone against 5 enemy vessels. The communication channel crackled, and a new voice filled the bridge. It was harsh and cruel, speaking in the common trade language that most species understood. "Attention, Kashiri vessel. This is Commander Croth of the Varaxian Confederation. We have come to collect our cargo. Surrender your passengers peacefully, and you will not be harmed. Resist, and we will take them anyway. Along with your lives." Ella felt her heart stop. Cargo. The raiders saw her people as cargo, as slaves to be taken and sold, as property rather than persons. She had heard stories about Vraxian slave markets, about the horrors that awaited those who were captured. Death would be better. Death would be mercy. But before she could respond, another voice came through the channel. It was calm and steady, and carried an edge of steel that made the air feel colder. "Vraxian vessel. This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Terran Navy ship Resolute. These people are under our protection. You will withdraw immediately or face the consequences." There was a moment of silence, and then Crow laughed. It was an ugly sound, full of contempt and amusement. "One human ship against 5 of ours. You are brave human, but you are also foolish. Take your little warship and leave. We have no quarrel with you. The Kashiri are our prize, not yours. These people called for help," we answered. "That makes them ours to protect. You would die for strangers, for beings you have never met. Yes." The single word hung in the air, simple and absolute. If void between stars had never felt so small. Commander Croth stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crimson Fang, watching the human warship with a mixture of amusement and irritation. One ship. The humans had sent one ship to protect the Kashiri. And now that one ship was refusing to move, refusing to see reason, refusing to do the simple calculation that any sensible being would make. 5 against 1. The math was obvious. The outcome was certain. Yet the human commander spoke as if she held the advantage, as if her single vessel could somehow stand against his fleet. Humans were insane. Everyone knew this. They fought wars they could not win, made promises they could not keep, died for cousins that made no logical sense. It was what made them dangerous, but it was also what made them foolish. Croth had raided human ships before. He had learned to respect their ferocity, their skill, their absolute refusal to surrender, even when surrender was the only sensible option. But he had also learned that they could bleed, they could die, they were not invincible, no matter what the stories said. Commander Chen Croth said, opening the communication channel again, "I will give you one final chance. Leave now and you and your crew will survive. The Kashir are nothing to you. They are prey, weak and helpless, unable to defend themselves. Why throw away your lives for animals?" The human's voice came back calm and steady, without a trace of fear. "They are not animals. They are people, and we do not abandon people. Then you will die maybe, but we will not abandon them." Croth felt a flash of genuine confusion. He had seen many species in his years of raiding, had learned to read their reactions, their fears, their breaking points. Humans were difficult because they seemed to lack breaking points entirely. They would fight until they were dead, never yielding, never surrendering, never doing the sensible thing and saving themselves when the battle was lost. It was maddening. It was also in a strange way almost admirable. Almost. "You have made your choice," Croth said, "now live with the consequences." He closed the channel and turned to his tactical officer. "All ships attack formation. Destroy the human vessel. Take the Kashir alive. Their value decreases if they are damaged." The Vraxian fleet began to move on the Vani star. Captain Avalith watched the tactical display with growing horror. She could see the raider ships spreading out, surrounding the Resolute like predators circling wounded prey. The human warship was alone, outnumbered, outgunned. There was no way it could win. There was no way it could even survive. Yet the humans aboard her ship had not stopped working. In the engineering section, Lieutenant Park was still trying to repair the drive core, his hands moving with desperate speed as he connected systems and rerouted power. In the medical bay, Dr. Okonkwo was still treating patients, still wrapping children in warm blankets, still speaking in soft, reassuring tones, as if the battle outside was nothing more than a minor inconvenience. Elder Sorv stood beside Avalith, his glow pale with fear. "They cannot win," he said quietly. "One ship against 5, it is impossible. Then why are they fighting? If asked, why do they not run? They could escape. They could save themselves. Why do they stay? Because they promised to protect us." If turned to look at the old elder, confused. A promise to strangers means more than their lives. To humans, it seems. Yes. Seth's voice was filled with wonder and sadness. They are truly insane. Or they are something else entirely. Something we do not have words for. The first shots were fired. The Resolute erupted with light as her weapons systems opened fire. Plasma bolts and missiles streaking across the void toward the approaching raiders. The Vraxian ships returned fire immediately, their own weapons filling space with deadly energy. Explosions bloomed in the darkness. Brief flowers of fire that vanished as quickly as they appeared. Commander Chen stood at the center of her bridge, calling out orders in a voice that never wavered. She had been in battles before, had faced enemies who outnumbered her, had made peace with the possibility of death long ago. Fear was a luxury she could not afford. Her crew needed her calm, her confidence, her absolute certainty that they were doing the right thing. Helm, evasive pattern Delta. Keep us between the raiders and the Kiri ship. Tactical, concentrate fire on the lead vessel. Take out their weapons first, then their engines. I, Commander. The Resolute danced through space, moving with a grace that seemed impossible for a ship her size. Human reflexes, human instincts, human training. Centuries of warfare had taught them how to fight, how to move, how to survive against overwhelming odds. They had learned these lessons in blood, had paid for them with millions of lives, and they would not waste them now. The lead Vraxian ship, the Crimson Fang, shuddered as human weapons tore into her shields. Warning lights flared across her hull, and Croth felt a moment of genuine surprise. The human ship was fast, faster than he had expected, and her weapons were more powerful than they had any right to be. "Return fire," he snarled. "All ships, focus on the human vessel. Bring her down," for ships turned their weapons on the Resolute. The void lit up with destruction, beams of energy, and clouds of missiles converging on the human warship from every direction. Chen watched them coming, calculating trajectories, predicting patterns, finding the gaps in the storm of death. Helm hardport angle our shields toward the Crimson Fang. Tactical launch countermeasures. The Resolute twisted in space, presenting her strongest shields to the heaviest fire, while her countermeasures filled the void with electronic noise and false targets. Missiles that should have struck her hull detonated harmlessly in the distance. Energy beams splashed against shields that held far longer than they should have, but they could not hold forever. Shield 3 is failing. Lieutenant Torres reported. "Hull breach on Deck 7. We have casualties." Chen's jaw tightened, but her voice remained steady. "Seal the breach. Rue power to Shield 3 and keep firing." The battle continued minute after desperate minute. The Resolute scored hit after hit on the Vrayan ships, her weapons striking with terrible precision, her crew fighting with the skill and determination that had made humanity feared throughout the galaxy. But the raiders kept coming, kept firing, kept pressing their advantage in numbers. Aboard the Vandy Star, the Kashiri watched in stunned silence. They had seen battles before, in recordings and simulations and historical documents, but they had never seen anything like this. The human ship moved like a living thing, dodging and weaving through fire that should have destroyed her a dozen times over. Her weapons never stopped firing, never stopped finding targets, never stopped dealing damage to enemies that outnumbered her 5-1. And still the humans aboard the Villani Star worked. Lieutenant Park had managed to restore partial power to the sensor ray, giving them a better view of the battle. Dr. Okonkwo had moved her patients to the most protected parts of the ship, preparing for the worst while hoping for the best. A young Kishiri child tugged at the sleeve of a human engineer, a female with red hair and tired eyes. "Are you scared?" the child asked. The engineer looked down and smiled. It was a strange smile full of warmth and sadness, and something that might have been pride. "Yes," she admitted. "I am scared, but that is okay. Being scared means you have something worth protecting. Will you die?" The engineer was quiet for a moment. Then she knelt down so that she was at eye level with the child. "Maybe," she said honestly, "but if I do, it will be because I was protecting you, and that is a good reason to die." The child did not understand. How could she? She was young, innocent, sheltered from the harsh realities of the universe. But something in the human's words touched her, made her feel safe, even as the ship shook from the distant impacts of the battle outside. On the Resolute, Commander Chen tasted blood. A console had exploded near her, showering her with sparks and shrapnel, opening a cut on her forehead that bled freely. She wiped the blood from her eyes and kept fighting. "Tactical target the second ship. Their shields are weakening. I commander firing the second Vraxian raider." The Void Hunter took a direct hit to her engine section. The explosion was massive, a ball of fire that consumed half the ship and left the rest drifting and dead to down. But the Resolute was hurting. Her shields were failing. Her hull was breached in multiple places, and her crew was dying. Damage reports came in from every section of the ship. Lists of casualties that Chen did not have time to mourn. Commander Torres said, his voice strained, "We cannot take much more. Our shields are at 15%. Another direct hit, and we will lose life support. Then we do not take another direct hit. Helm evasive pattern Omega. All available power to forward shields." The ship lurched as she changed course, spinning through space in a maneuver that would have killed any crew not strapped into their seats. The Vraxian weapons missed by meters, close enough to heat the hull, but not close enough to breach it. And then the Resolute fired everything she had left. The third raider ship simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, weapons blazing, crew fighting. The next moment there was only fire and debris and the screaming of the void. The fourth ship took heavy damage, her weapons silenced, her engines crippled. Croth stared at the display in disbelief. 3 of his ships. The silence after battle was always strange. Commander Sarah Chen stood in the medical bay of the Resolute, watching Dr. Martinez work on the wounded. The room was crowded, beds filled with crew members who had paid the price for victory. Some would recover fully. Some would carry scars for the rest of their lives. 12 would never leave the bay at all. Their bodies already moved to the ship's morgue, waiting for proper honors when they reached home. 12 dead, 37 wounded. The cost of saving 3,000 strangers. Chen did not regret the decision. She could not regret it, but she felt the weight of every life lost. Every family that would receive the message no one wanted to deliver. Every empty seat at tables back on Earth and the colonies. This was the burden of command, the price of leadership. You sent people to die, and you lived with the consequences. A hand touched her arm, and she turned to find Lieutenant Torres standing beside her. His left arm was in a sling broken when a console exploded during the battle, but he had refused to leave the bridge until the fighting was over. "The Kishiri captain is asking to speak with you," Torres said quietly. "She has been waiting outside the medical bay for almost an hour." Chen nodded. She had been avoiding this conversation, though she was not entirely sure why. Perhaps it was the look she had seen in Avalith's eyes, the mixture of wonder and confusion, and something that looked almost like worship. Humans did not save the Kishiri because they wanted gratitude. They saved them because it was right. The difference mattered. "Send her in," Chen said. If entered slowly, her glow shifting through colors that Chen did not know how to read. The Kishiri captain was tall, thin, fragile-looking, in a way that made Chen want to protect her. She moved carefully among the wounded humans, her eyes taking in the blood and bandages and exhaustion. Commander Chenvelith said, her voice soft. I do not have words. Then do not use them. Chen gestured to an empty chair near the wall. Sit, you look tired. Evelith sat, though she seemed uncomfortable, out of place in this room full of wounded warriors. Your people are hurt because of us, because you chose to protect us. They are hurt because the Vraxians chose to attack. The blame belongs to them, not to you. But if we had not been here, then the Vraxians would have attacked someone else, some other ship, some other species, some other victims. The evil was in their choice, not in your existence. Chen sat down across from the Kashiri captain, wincing slightly as her bruised ribs protested. Do not carry guilt that is not yours to carry. Evelith was quiet for a long moment. Her glow had settled into a soft blue, something that Chen guessed might indicate sadness or confusion. I have been watching your people, she said finally. Since the battle ended, they have not stopped working. Your ship is damaged, your crew is wounded, and yet they are still aboard my vessel, still repairing our drive core, still treating our sick. Of course. Why of course? You owe us nothing. You have already saved us. Why do you continue? Chen smiled, though it was a tired smile. Because the job is not finished. Your ship is still broken. Your people still need help. We do not stop until everyone is safe, but your own ship needs repairs. Our ship can fly. Yours cannot. We have time. You do not. Chen shrugged, then winced again at the pain in her ribs. It is not complicated. We help those who need help most, and right now that is you. If Elith shook her head slowly, you speak as if this is obvious, as if everyone would do what you have done. But they would not, Commander. No one would. In my experience, in everything I have learned about the galaxy, no one helps without expecting something in return. Then your experience has been with the wrong people. The Kashiri captain studied Chen's face, searching for something, deception perhaps, or hidden motives. She found neither. The humans' eyes were tired and pained, but they were honest. Whatever else humans were, whatever violence they were capable of, this woman was telling the truth. I want to understand, Evelath said quietly. I need to understand. We have stories about your people, Commander. We teach our children to fear you. We say that humans are destroyers, conquerors, the most dangerous species in the galaxy. We say that you brought down the hegemony and shattered the Vraxian Empire and left entire worlds burning in your wake. Are these stories wrong? Chen was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was thoughtful, careful. The stories are not wrong. We did those things. We destroyed the hegemony and broke the Vraxian Empire and fought wars that left entire systems in ruins. We are capable of terrible violence, terrible destruction. Your people are right to know this. Then how do you explain what you have done for us? How can the same species that burns worlds also give blood to save strangers? Because we are both, Chen leaned forward, meeting Evelith's eyes. Humanity is not one thing. We are not purely violent or purely peaceful, not purely selfish or purely generous. We contain all of these things and we choose which to express. The violence you have heard about was always in response to something else. The hegemony enslaved billions. The Vraxian Empire consumed worlds. We destroyed them, not because we love destruction, but because we could not allow their evil to continue. And when there is no evil to destroy, when there is only a broken ship full of frightened colonists, then we protect, we heal, we answer distress calls and repair drive coursers and wrap cold children in warm blankets. Chen's voice softened. We are dangerous. Captain of your stories are correct about that. But we choose who we are dangerous to. We choose what our strength is for. And we have chosen to be guardians, not conquerors, protectors, not predators. Illith sat with this for a long time. Around them, the medical bay hummed with activity. Doctors treating wounds, patients resting, the quiet machinery of healing at work. It was strange, she thought, to have this conversation here, surrounded by evidence of human fragility and human sacrifice. Your people died for us, she said. Finally I saw the reports. 12 dead, many more wounded. They did not know us. They had no reason to care about us. Yet they gave their lives. Yes. Do their families know? Will they understand? Shen's expression flickered. And for a moment, Avalith saw something behind the calm grief perhaps. Or guilt. They will understand, the commander said quietly. Every human family understands. When we send our children into space, we know what we are asking of them. We know they may not come home, and we know that if they die, it will be for something that matters. How can you bear it? How can you accept such losses? We do not accept them. We carry them. Chen touched her chest above her heart. Every life lost is a wound that never fully heals. But we would rather carry those wounds than live in a galaxy where the strong prey on the weak, and no one comes when you call for help. Felt her glow shifting again, colors she could not control. She had come to this room with questions, and she was leaving with more questions than before. But she was also leaving with something else, something unexpected. Hope, wonder, the beginning of a new understanding. Commander Chen, she said, rising from her chair, when our ship is repaired and our people are safe, what will you do? Continue our patrol, repair our own vessel, report to command? Chen shrugged. The usual. And if we wanted to thank you, if we want to repay what you have done? Shen smiled, and this time the smile reached her eyes. You do not need to repay us. That is not why we did it. She paused, considering, but if you want to do something, remember this moment. Remember that when you were alone in the darkness, someone answered, and someday when you have the chance to help someone who is lost and afraid, do not calculate the cost. Do not ask what you will receive in return. Just help them, because that is how you repay us by becoming the answer for someone else. Illith stood in the doorway of the medical bay. Looking back at the human commander surrounded by her wounded crew, she thought about the stories her people told, the warnings and fears, the image of humans as monsters lurking in the dark between stars. The stories were wrong. Or perhaps they were simply incomplete. Humans were not monsters. They were something far more complex, far more strange. They were beings who could burn worlds and heal children in the same breath, who could fight with the ferocity of demons and weep for strangers they had never met. They were contradictions made flesh, impossibilities walking in human form, and they had answered a distress call from a broken ship full of colonists who had nothing to offer in return. Evelth turned and walked back to her own vessel where her people waited, where the human engineers still worked on the drive core that would carry them to their new home. She did not understand humans. She might never fully understand them, but she knew now that she had been wrong to fear them. The truly dangerous species in the galaxy were not the ones who could destroy you. They were the ones who would destroy themselves to save you. And for the first time in her life, Captain Avalith was grateful that such a species existed. 3 days passed in the void between stars. The human engineers worked without stopping, sleeping in shifts, eating meals, standing up, refusing to rest until the job was done. Lieutenant Park had become something of a legend among the Kishiri, a figure of almost mythical skill who could coax his broken systems back to life through sheer determination. The drive core that every Curie technician had declared unfixable was now humming with steady power, ready to carry them to their new home. Dr. Okonkwo had treated every patient aboard the Veli Star before turning her attention to her own wounded. The Kishir children followed her everywhere, fascinated by this gentle human who spoke softly and smiled often, and seemed to carry an endless supply of warmth in her heart. She taught them human games, sang them human songs, told them stories about a blue world called Earth, where humans had learned to be what they were. On the bridge of the Vani Star, Captain Ivalath stood beside Elder Sorth, watching the final preparations for departure. The view screen showed the Resolute floating nearby, scarred and battered from the battle, her hull marked with wounds that would take weeks to fully repair. Yet the human ship still stood guard, still watched over them, still protected them even now. The drive core is ready, Chief Technician Verith reported. We can jump to hyperspace whenever you give the order, Captain. Illith nodded, but she did not immediately give the order. Instead, she turned to Sorth. I need to speak with Commander Chen before we leave. There is something I must say. Then say it, Captain. The humans are listening. Ivalath opened a channel to the Resolute. Within moments, Commander Chen's face appeared on the screen. The human looked tired, dark circles under her eyes, a new bandage on her forehead, the weight of loss visible in every line of her face. But she smiled when she saw Avalith, and the smile was genuine. "Captain, your ship is ready to fly. Thanks to your people, yes, we will be able to reach our colony world without difficulty." Ivelith paused, struggling to find the words she wanted. Human language felt inadequate for what she needed to express. "Commander Chen, I have been trying to find a way to thank you, to express what you have done for us, but every word feels too small." Shen shook her head. "You do not need to thank us, Captain. We told you that. I know. You told us that help requires no payment, that saving strangers is simply what humans do. I did not understand that before. I am beginning to understand it now." Evalath took a deep breath. "But I need to give you something anyway. Not as payment, but as a gift. A gift from my people to yours." "What kind of gift?" Evil gestured to Elder Sorth, who stepped forward with a small crystal clutched in his narrowed hands. The crystal glowed with soft internal light, colors shifting and swirling in patterns that seemed almost alive. "This is a memory stone," Ivelth explained. "It is one of the most precious artifacts of Kashiri culture. We use them to record our histories, our songs, our stories. This one contains the story of what happened here. The story of how a human warship answered a distress call from strangers and fought against impossible odds to save them." Chen's expression softened. "You do not need to, please, voice but gentle. This story must be told. My people have believed lies about humans for too long. We have taught our children to fear you, without understanding why you are truly dangerous. This memory stone will correct that. It will show them the truth, that humans are dangerous because they will die for people they have never met. Fight for cousins that bring them no benefit. Sacrifice everything for a promise made to strangers." She paused, her glow brightening with emotion. "Commander Chen, before I met you, I thought humans were monsters. I thought the stories of destruction and conquest were all there was to know about your species. I was wrong. You are not monsters. You are guardians. You are protectors. You are the answer when someone calls for help in the darkness." Shen was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion that she did not try to hide. "We are not perfect, Captain. We make mistakes. We fail. Sometimes we choose wrong, but we try. Every day we try to be worthy of what our ancestors built, what our children will inherit. We try to be the species that answers instead of the species that ignores. You have succeeded." Ilith bowed her head in the Kiri gesture of deepest respect. "On behalf of 3,000 colonists, on behalf of every child you saved and every elder you healed, I thank you. Not because you need thanks, but because you deserve them." Shen returned the bow as best she could, a human approximation of the Kashiri gesture. "It has been our honor, Captain Nevelith. Safe travels to your new home." The channel closed, but the connection remained. Something had passed between the two ships, the two species, something that transcended language and culture and the vast distances of space. Understanding, respect, the beginning of something that might in time grow into friendship. The Velan Star's engines powered up, filling the ship with a gentle hum that spoke of life and motion and futures yet to come. The colonists felt it and knew what it meant they were going home. After 23 days of fear and despair, after coming within hours of death, they were finally going home. Dot. Captain gave the order, and the stars stretched around them as the ship entered hyperspace. The last thing they saw through the viewscreen was the Resolute, scarred and battered and beautiful, watching over them until the very end. Dot in the colony ship's common areas. The Kishir gathered to share their stories. Parents told children about the humans who had saved them. Elders spoke of Commander Chen and her crew, of Lieutenant Park and Dr. Okonk, of the engineers and medics and warriors who had given everything to protect strangers. The stories spread through the ship like light through darkness, pushing back the fear that had gripped them for so long. Elder Sorth sat among a group of children, the memory stone glowing softly in his hands. The children watched with wide eyes, their glows flickering with curiosity and wonder. "Tell us again," one child said. "Tell us about the humans." Sorth smiled, his old face creasing with warmth. "The humans are a strange species," he began. "They come from a small blue world orbiting a yellow star far from the great empires of the galaxy. For many years, we believed they were dangerous. We taught our children to fear them, to avoid their ships, to run from their shadow. Were we right to fear them? Another child asked. Sorvith considered the question carefully. Yes and no, he said finally. The humans are dangerous. They have destroyed empires and shattered fleets and left worlds burning in their wake. Anyone who challenges them does so at great risk, but the humans are not dangerous in the way we believed. He held up the memory stone, letting its light play across the children's faces. The humans are dangerous because they care. They are dangerous because they will fight for people they have never met. Die for promises they had no reason to make. Sacrifice everything for strangers who cannot repay them. They are dangerous because they have decided that no one should be alone in the darkness, and they are willing to enforce that decision with all the power they possess. Is that a good kind of dangerous? A young voice asked. It is the best kind, Surth replied. It is the kind of dangerous that protects instead of destroys. The kind that saves instead of conquers. The kind that answers when you call for help, even when you have nothing to offer in return. The children were quiet, processing this new understanding. Their glows shifted and changed, fear fading into something brighter, something that looked almost like hope. Will we see the humans again? One child asked. Sorvith looked out the viewport at the swirling colors of hyperspace. Thinking about the battered warship they had left behind, the commander with blood on her face and steel in her eyes, the crew that had worked and fought and blood for people they did not know. I hope so, he said softly. I truly hope so. Years passed. The Kashiri colonists reached their new home and built their new world. They planted gardens and raised families and created art that sang of their journey and their salvation. And in every school, in every community hall, in every place where young Kashir gathered to learn about the galaxy, a new story was told. It was the story of a broken ship in the darkness, of a distress call that had gone unanswered for 20 days, of the moment when hope had died and the cold had crept into every corner of their lives. And it was the story of what happened next, the story of a human warship emerging from hyperspace, her weapons silent, her crew offering help without conditions. The story of engineers who worked for days without rest, of doctors who healed the sick and comforted the frightened, of warriors who fought against impossible odds and won. The story of Commander Chen, standing on her battered bridge, blood running down her face, refusing to retreat, refusing to abandon the people she had promised to protect. The children who heard these stories grew up with a different understanding of humans than their parents had known. They learned that the most dangerous species in the galaxy was also the most compassionate. They learned that strength and kindness were not opposites but partners. They learned that in the cold darkness between stars, the answer to fear was not violence or isolation, but connection, community, the simple act of answering when someone called for help, and when those children grew up and had children of their own.